this Sanskrit word khanda. Khanda means peak, which supposedly has gone from the Dravidian languages. In sound patterns, for example, in Sanskrit we have the word the word atta, meaning 8 in Sanskrit, and subsequently it becomes in Prakrit it becomes atta, and subsequently in modern languages it becomes art. So when we do comparative studies, we get to know the way languages change, the way languages borrow, and the way languages evolve. It will tell us the direction of change, and what items are borrowed, what items have undergone structural changes. I have two issues to address here. The topic today is about the linguistic heritage of a group of languages. And when we talk about linguistic heritages, we can approach this topic from various perspectives. And since my background is in linguistics, I would like to approach this subject matter as a linguist. And keeping that in mind, I would like to first, talk briefly about what we do in linguistics, and then come to the main topic, that is the Dravidian linguistic heritage. As I said, first let us look at this subject matter, linguistics. I mean, what do we do? What do we mean by linguistics? What do we do in linguistics? Now, here, this characterization of linguistics comes from a well-known figure in linguistics, Ferdinand de Saussure. And he says the concrete object of linguistic science is the social product deposited in the brain of each individual, that is language. But the product differs with linguistic groups. We have to work with languages. The linguist is obliged to acquaint himself with the greatest possible number of languages in order to determine what is universal in them by observing and comparing them. Now, this is how Saussure has characterized the discipline. And again, we get another characterization, and this is by another very prominent figure in the field, that is Bloomfield, Leonard Bloomfield, and he says, linguistics, the study of language. So that is, linguistics is the study of language. I think that should be good enough for the purposes that we have here. When we say we do linguistics, when we say that we are linguists, basically we study languages. We study languages from various perspectives, but basically, language is the subject matter of our discipline. Now, what are languages? What is a language? How do we define languages? Now, this is another tough question that we always face. And here we got, I have two definitions. First one is from Busman. He says, vehicle for the expression, language. Languages are vehicle for the expression or exchanging of thoughts, concepts, knowledge, and information, as well as the fixing and transmission of experience and knowledge. It is based on cognitive processes, subject to societal factors, and subject to historical change and development. In this definition, language refers to a specific form of expression that is restricted to humans and differs from all other possible languages, such as animal communication and artificial languages through creativity, the ability to make conceptual abstractions, and the possibility of metalinguistic reflection. So we can see how complicated it is to characterize what we mean by languages. And let us look at another way of characterizing language, and this is by Campbell and his colleague. The notion language, so intuitively clear, has proven remarkably difficult to define at times. At issue are the distinction between separate languages and the dialects of a single language, and the extent to which political, cultural, and other matters enter the definition of particular languages. Wenrick said a language is a dialect which has an army and a navy. This emphasizes the fact that the definition of language is not strictly a linguistic matter, but often involves political and cultural considerations. So now these are professional linguists, and we can see that how difficult it is to define what languages are. And with that knowledge, with the understanding that it is not easy to characterize language, and language has multiple angles to it. We look into our languages, the human languages, and a question that many of us routinely ask is, how many languages do we have in the world? What about the globe? How many languages do we have? And the answer is at the third bullet point. As of now, we say that some 7,000 languages are there, maybe 5,000 to 7,000. There is no fixed number here. There is a lot of variation. And in the course of our history, we have lost more than 2 lakh languages. And according to one estimation, what we have today is just just 3% of whatever was there in the past. So the next question that we want to address is, okay, so if there are 7,000 languages in the world, what about our country, India? How many languages do we have in India? Again, this surprisingly simple question does not yield a very straightforward answer. So here we can see some data. Linguistic Survey of India. Now, the Linguistic Survey of India, this is something that happened before our independence. It was conducted by a British scholar, George Grierson. And in that survey, he recorded 179 languages and some 544 dialects. Now, we should remember that, when we say 179 languages, maybe sometimes some of these languages may be dialects as well. Some people may call them as dialects, and some people may call them as languages. And this Linguistic Survey of India did not result in any further survey after our independence. Till date, we don't have any other survey of this magnitude. And our census routinely documents, we get some 120 plus languages, and usually they take languages with minimum 10,000 speakers. If the number of speakers is less than 10,000, they don't have any provision of counting. Sometimes they do report, but there are limitations. And then the third survey that happened here, third bullet point, People's Linguistic Survey of India. This was carried out by one private agency in India, and it documented 780 languages. So we can see the variation in these two figures, 179 languages, 780 languages. And at the same time, we have external agencies like Ethnologue, which say, okay, there are some 400 plus languages in India when compared to 7,000 plus languages across the globe. And the counting in India, it goes up to 2,000 varieties of speech. This is what we have in our hands. Okay, so if that is the case of our languages, how many language families do we have in our country? Now here, you may see a change in the title. How many languages are there in India? And here we have replaced the term India with South Asia. We will come to this issue later on, why we have done that. And these are some of the language families that we have identified in South Asia. So we have Andamanese, Dravidian, Indo-Aryan, Iranian, Munda, other Austroasiatic languages, Tibeto-Burman, and then there are language isolates. We have some examples of these languages. This is a partial list. Maybe I think I have not mentioned another 2-3 groups like Nuristani and so on, or Thai Kadai. Now, before we proceed any further, we have to immediately understand what do we mean by language families. This is one very interesting, very curious question that many people get. Okay, we understand when you say Malayalam, or when you say Hindi, or when you say Gujarati, or when you say Ao, or when you say Angami, we understand. But what do you mean by language families? What do you mean by them, by this term? And for that, we will have to do a very small exercise. Now, whenever we study a group of languages and put them together as genetic groups, we mean to say that at one point in time, they originated from a common ancestor. So there was a common ancestor, and from that common ancestor, these languages evolved. And that is the idea of genetic grouping in linguistics. And we take one example here. Now, see here we have list of languages: Kannada, Malayalam, Tamil, Telugu, Hindi, Marathi, Bengali, Sinhala, Santali, Mundari, Korku, Gutuk. For sake of argument, ignore. Some of you may be knowing that they belong to different language families, but just ignore. Let us, for time being, just ignore that fact and look at on our right hand side what we have here. We have here the English 1, the numeral 1, the citation form. And we have collected the equivalent of the numeral 1 in these languages. That is what we have done here. So the numeral 1 in Kannada or Malayalam, it is Ondu, Onnu, Ondru, or Okati. And as against that, the numeral 1 in Hindi or other languages, Ek, Eka, Ek, Ak. And as against that, we have a third pattern here: Mit, Miad, Miang, or Muiro. Now, what we can see here is that there are, formal correspondences. The sound patterns match in some cases. The sound patterns match in some cases. So you can see that in four of the first cases, the first four cases, the sound patterns are similar. There is an initial O, 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 O. So this is the O type. And as against that, if we look at the next four forms, it is the A form, ek, 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 ek. And as against that, if we take the final four forms, it is the ma type, mit, me, and mu. So this is how, when we look at the similarities in the forms, and if we can establish some kind of sound correspondences between these forms, we say that most probably these languages, they have originated from a common ancestor. That is what we mean. That is what we mean. So looking at the forms, and if there are similarities in the forms, and if we can establish sound correspondences among these forms, we say that, okay, most probably these languages have originated from a common ancestor. Now here, I have simplified this to a great extent. Now here we have the numeral 1. Like this, we take a lot of basic vocabulary items, some 200 or 300 basic vocabulary items like numerals, kinship terms, basic action verbs like go, and sit, and walk, and give, or body parts. And we create lists like this. And whenever we can establish such, whenever we find such correspondences, we make a hypothesis that, okay, these languages form a genetic group. That is the rationale behind, identifying these language families. And this is something that is not unique to India or South Asia. This is applied to all the languages across different regions of our world. I hope this makes sense. So this is about the genetic grouping of the languages that we speak. Okay, now coming back to the languages of India or South Asia. Historically, in terms of social and cultural influences, we identify three major languages: Sanskrit, Persian, and English, and they have tremendously influenced the other languages of South Asia, mainly in terms of vocabulary items. So that is the reason why we find a lot of Sanskrit words in all our languages, irrespective of whether the language has come, whether the language is genetically related to Sanskrit or not. So we find a lot of Sanskrit words in Hindi or Marathi. We find a lot of Sanskrit words in Kannada or Malayalam. Likewise, we find a lot of words, Persian words in all these languages, and the same goes with English. So this is the socio-cultural aspect of our languages. Okay, now we have to quickly, not take much time for this, very quickly look at the history of linguistics in the West. Now, the reason why we are doing this is linguistics as a subject matter that is taught in across Indian universities. It has a Western origin, even though we have traditional classical grammars of Indian languages. The modern day subject matter linguistics, whatever we say as linguistics, its roots are in the Western uh, knowledge systems. And in the Western knowledge systems, uh, as far as our knowledge goes, and here see I'm showing the citations here. So these are all a summary of these linguist works. It started our curiosity, our interest in languages started with Greek, with the Greek language. And people started to work on the Greek language mainly because they wanted to study the Greek classics, but the language, the contemporary Greek language, was fast changing, so they wanted supplements to study the Greek classic works. And this tradition subsequently influenced the Latin traditions. So people started to follow this Greek tradition into the Latin language. And subsequently, by the time it was 15th century AD or so, the influence spread to Arab and Hebrew languages. They also started to work on their languages. After that, we have 16th century AD. 16th century AD in the history of linguistics is a very happening time, because that is when we were doing a lot of voyages, a lot of conquests, a lot of colonization. All these activities were happening, and because of that, people came into contact with one another, and people were exposed to new types of languages, and so on and so forth. And that invoked curiosity, that resulted in a lot of curious inquiries about languages. And after 16th century, people started to study languages in a bigger way, in a greater extent. And in 19th century AD, we have a field called comparative historical linguistics. So if we look at the history of historical linguistics, people say that it starts in early 19th century. But it does not mean that in 18th century people were not doing historical linguistics. There were curious, there were inquiries regarding the relatedness of languages. But 19th century AD, we have a well-established discipline called comparative historical linguistics. So basically, when people started to write the history of linguistics, from here they have traveled back in past, and they have related the discipline all the way back to Plato's Critylus. Now this is a very common practice in Western knowledge systems. If we look at the Western disciplines, say linguistics or political science or sociology, finally they try to go back to the dialogues of Plato. And in the case of linguistics, the historians try to link the modern day discipline all the way back to Plato. But the first few formidable steps were taken during this time. And another equally another interest that was going on during that period was philosophy of languages, and we don't have a very good idea of what these people were doing. And I'm giving one name here, William Humboldt. I'm sure some of you might have heard this name. But we don't know. For example, see what Bloomfield says. He says other students examined a variety of languages in order to get a philosophical survey of human speech. In fact, much of the older descriptive work is almost unintelligible today because it is pervaded by philosophical notions that are no longer familiar to us. So that is one of the reasons why this tradition did not continue. We come across Humboldt scholars and all, but usually this is this has sustained, this discipline has sustained, and this you can say that it is not as popular as comparative historical linguistics. And subsequent to comparative historical linguistics, we get what many of us today might have heard of, that is structuralism, attributed to a big name in the field, Ferdinand de Saussure. So structuralism comes after comparative historical linguistics, and structuralism subsequently changes to American structuralism. This is a reflection of the changing political and economic scenarios of education of linguistics. So structuralism becomes American structuralism, and American structuralism. Within American structuralism, we have in recent times a big, very popular theoretical approach known as generative linguistics, attributed to Noam Chomsky. I'm sure again some of you are familiar with this name, Noam Chomsky. Uh, in India, our readings come from the English literature on linguistics. So, linguistics, as it originated here, people were writing in German, they were writing in French, they were writing in Dutch, they were writing in major European languages. But by the time it reached India, the Western knowledge reached India, it's mainly linguistics as written in the English language. That is why we have so many Indian linguists going to England or the USA to study linguistics, and our knowledge systems are built in the English language, and that is one of the reasons why we come to this angle. Okay, so summarizing whatever we have seen, so after the early classical period, we have comparative historical linguistics, and moving on to structuralism, and then American structuralism, and then generative linguistics. And today, when you say linguistics, it is a very big, very vast field. There are many research interests and many theoretical perspectives, because many theoreticians were not satisfied with generative linguistics, so they started to propose alternative theoretical perspectives. So today we have, when you say linguistics, there are people who study language acquisition, there are people who do historical linguistics, there are people who do social linguistics, there are people who do documentation, there are people who do computational linguistics. The field has become very, very big. Now that is, what we do today as, linguists. But at the same time, let us travel back in past to India. So what was going on in India? So were we studying languages in India? And of course, so we were studying languages, and many of us already know this phase. So in India, we call what we call as Indian grammatical tradition. So when we say Indian grammatical tradition, we refer to the classical grammars available on our languages that we are aware of. And many of us are familiar with this name, Panini, and his work Ashtadhyayi, attributed somewhere around the 4th century BC. This timing, the times are slightly tricky, so we don't have to take them very seriously, but this is the rough estimations. And this I'm referring to two authors here. Ashtadhyayi, as you know, this is on the Vedic language, Sanskrit. And then, subsequently we have commentaries of Katyayana and Patanjali again on Sanskrit, on the Sanskrit language. And subsequently, when by the time it is 2nd century BC, we get the Buddhists. So Buddhism developed by that time, and they were also interested in the philosophy of language, and they were also working particularly on Prakrit varieties, including Pali. And at the same time, we have an attestation from one of the Dravidian languages, Tamil, and the grammar work is Tolkappiyam. And I'm sure many of us, particularly Tamilians, know this work, Tolkappiyam. This is one of the early records of, the grammatical traditions on the Dravidian languages. And so that means now people were writing grammars of Sanskrit. They were also writing grammars of Tamil. So when we say Indian grammatical tradition, it does not mean that only one language. People were studying only one language. People were studying multiple languages. That is what it clearly means. And again, as we can see on this slide, we get philosophical commentaries like Bhartrhari's Vakyapadiya, or we get Pali grammars like Katyayana's Pakarana. And at the same time, we also have, in the same time period, we have works on Kannada, Tamil, Telugu, and other languages. So for example, Kannada work, we have Kaviraja Marga, which has some grammatical descriptions, and Tamil grammar, Viracholiyam, or Telugu grammar, Andhra Shabda Chintamani, or Kannada grammar, Karnataka Bhasha Bhushana, by various authors. Many of them, particularly in Kannada literary and grammatical traditions, many of these authors were Jainas. And they have either written the treatise in Sanskrit language, or some of them have written it in the native languages. And this tradition, what started around this time, this tradition continued. It continued, now we are looking at 12th century AD. It also subsequently continued. And again, we get Telugu grammar, Kannada grammar, Tamil grammar, Malayalam grammar. So for example, Andhra Bhasha Bhushanamu, or Shabdamani Darpana, or Nannul, or Leela Tilakam. And at the same time, people were writing commentaries of Indo-Aryan languages as well. For example, Bhattacharya Dikshita's Siddhanta Kaumudi, this is on Sanskrit, and Kannada grammar Shabdanushasana, and Tamil grammar Ilakkana Vilakkam, or Telugu grammar Balavyakaranam, or Malayalam grammar Kerala Paniniyam. So this is, these grammars, the dating is 19th century AD. So that means the Indian grammatical tradition, has a very continued, practice of writing grammars of languages, including the Dravidian languages, and that becomes very evident when we look at these facts. Okay, so in India, in the classical Indian grammatical tradition, we have Paninian and non-Paninian traditions working on these languages. And then 19th century onward, because Indians were exposed more and more to the Western practices, and because by that time we have a lot of missionary activities going on Indian languages, we get a lot of missionary grammars on Indian languages. These are some examples here. And then at the same time, people were doing comparative historical linguistics of Indian languages. So for example, this Beams, this is on Indo-Aryan language, historical linguistics of Indo-Aryan languages. And Caldwell, 1856, this is uh, on the historical linguistics of Dravidian languages. And people were writing historical grammars of particular Indian languages, for example, Kittal on Kannada. And subsequently, now we may see that these are all foreign scholars, people who came from outside, and subsequently the Indians who were trained in these traditions, Western traditions, they also started to continue the tradition. So, for example, descriptive grammars of Indian languages is Sridhar 1990 on Kannada. Then theoretical approaches to Indian languages, for example, Ramanujam 1963 or Nadakarani 1975. So what we are trying to say is that we can identify the classical period maybe till 19th century AD, and subsequently, people were more exposed to the Western ways of linguistic descriptions, and that is a shift. Now, this is the fate of linguistics in India, and we saw, how it affected the uh, the description of Indian languages, and at the same time, what do we do as administrators of our languages? So, for example, what do we do? What is there in our constitution? Now, this slide, it gives us some aspects of how we tackle, how we handle the linguistic situation of India. As we know, as of now, we have recognized some 22 scheduled languages, and many languages are in queue. They are demanding for scheduled status. I think the counting goes up to 30, 40 languages, and this many people know this aspect. Eighth schedule deals with the scheduled languages, but many people may not be doing this. And I think this, if people are, if the audience are interested, subsequently they can open the Constitution of India and read this part. It's a very interesting read, I promise you. It is not, it will not take more than some, maybe half an hour, maybe 40 minutes. It will not take more than that. It is going to be a very interesting read. So there is a chapter on language of the Union, and then there are regional languages, and then there are, how do we conduct in Supreme Court, High Court, etc. And then there are special directives regarding our minority languages, regarding our Union languages. And one aspect that I have not mentioned here is the Official Language Act. And that also, if you're interested, you may please read that. Okay, now coming back to our topic, you may recall that we saw that India, the term India was replaced by South Asia. So why do we do that? Now, when we say India or Nepal or Pakistan, these are modern day political regions. We have political boundaries, but in linguistics, we identify a region called South Asian region, and these are the countries which usually come in this South Asian region. And the reason why we cover this big region is because there is geographical continuity, and historically these people have migrated from one place to another very frequently. And that is the reason why we get a distribution of our languages like this. Now this on your left hand side, you see the political map of South Asia, and on your right hand side, we are looking at the languages of South Asia. So here, now our subject matter is here Dravidian, as we know, mainly spoken in the southern part of our country and also in Sri Lanka. But Dravidian languages are also spoken in pockets in Madhya Pradesh, And there is a Dravidian language spoken in Pakistan. Okay, so this is the distribution of Dravidian languages. As against that, you look at the distribution of Indo-Aryan languages, we have such a big area speaking Indo-Aryan languages, and there is an area here. The language is Sinhala, which is also an Indo-Aryan language. And then we have Munda languages spoken in small pockets in the northern and northeastern regions of India. And Nuristani is spoken here, a small tiny region, and other Austroasiatic. We have other Austroasiatic here. Usually, when we say other Austroasiatic, we have Kasi and Panar languages, and then we have the Nicobarese language, other Austroasiatic. These are also Austroasiatic languages, and Kasipan they are also Austroasiatic languages, and Munda languages are also Austroasiatic languages. It's a big family. And then we have the Daik. This is Tai Kadai group of languages spoken here, and then we have Iranian languages spoken in mainly in the Afghanistan and Pakistan regions. And then we have Tibeto-Burman languages spoken in the northeast regions of India, mainly, it's a big region. And Tibeto-Burman languages are, Tibeto-Burman languages are historically related to the Chinese language family. Okay, with this, we are now zooming into our subject matter today, the Dravidian languages. Again, I have not changed this map. This is the same map here. And I have replaced this map with a distribution of Dravidian languages in India. Now, as we can see, these are all Dravidian languages grouped into four subgroups, divided into four subgroups. So, South Dravidian languages, South Central Dravidian languages, Central Dravidian languages, and Northern Dravidian languages. South Dravidian languages spoken in the southernmost part, and then we have South Central languages spoken here, and then in very small pockets we have the Central languages, and then in the northern languages spoken in the northern part of India as well as in Pakistan. This is the distribution of Dravidian languages in the South Asian region. Okay, now this gives a list of Dravidian languages. This is from Krishnamurti 2003. This is a well-known reference book for Dravidian languages. And as we can see, he has provided some 26 Dravidian languages. There are many languages, if you check Ethnologue, I think last time when I checked, I think it was close to 70 languages. We as of now, this, if we go by this source, we get 26 Dravidian languages divided into four subgroups. And we have four languages in bold, meaning these are the major literary languages: Tamil, Malayalam, Kannada, and Telugu. And this is, what we try to do when we do linguistics, when we do historical linguistics. Basically, we collect data from languages. So there are languages here, there are languages here, there are languages here, there are languages here. And then we reconstruct, we travel back in time. We travel back in time, and then we arrive at what is known as Proto-Dravidian. So essentially, it is a hypothesis, and this hypothesis is based on real-time data that we get under each subgroups. Now, this diagram here means that Proto-Dravidian languages initially split into three main groups: South Dravidian, Central Dravidian, and North Dravidian groups. And subsequently, South Dravidian group split into South Dravidian and South Central Dravidian. And that is why we get 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That is the idea here. Let us very quickly look at this subgrouping. Now, see this. Now, when we collect data comes from these languages, Kuduk, Malto, Brahui, and then we travel back and try to construct a hypothesis. And let us look at the central grouping. Central grouping also we have uh, the same exercise. Now here we can see dotted line. Dotted line means the split is not, we are not sure about the split. So here now this is the Proto-South Dravidian 2. This is South Central. Now we have Telugu language here along with its immediate sisters Gondi, Konda, Kui, Pengo, Manda. And we have the Proto-South Dravidian 1. We have Malayalam and Tamil, and then Kannada is here. Now as you can see, Tamil and Malayalam, they make an immediate group. And here Kannada and Badaga, they make an immediate group here. So this is the meaning of these tree diagrams. Okay, now very quickly we want to look at the some of the salient features of Dravidian languages. Now this first one is going to be very easy, and I request all of you to start with this English sentence. The English sentence is they have kept their money in the bank. Now, here we have identified the feature. Feature says verb final. So in Dravidian languages, for example, here this data comes from Kannada. The verb in Dravidian languages, it comes at the end. So here, ಅವರು ಹಣವನ್ನು ಬ್ಯಾಂಕಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಇಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. So this is the verb, and the verb comes at the end. And if we try to do this exercise, not only in Dravidian languages, in other Indian languages, typically you will find the verb coming at the end. That is what we say verb final feature. And this is widely shared with other South Asian languages. So this is a feature that Dravidian languages share widely with other South Asian languages, including Indo-Aryan or Tibeto-Burman or Munda or other Austroasiatic languages. Perhaps I think two languages that don't have this feature, this verb final feature, are Kashmiri and Khasi. In Kashmiri and Khasi, the verb comes in the second position, just like English. Okay, this is one feature that we have covered today. And let us take another feature of Dravidian languages. Now here we are looking at conjunction type. It is conjunction. When we say conjunction, an item that connects two other items. And we have bisyndetic. So bi means two. So we have this conjunction in Dravidian languages, as in makanum and then makalum. Okay, this is from Tamil. Now here, look at the sentence here. My son and daughter will come later. Now, if you try to construct this sentence in your language, if you are a speaker of Tamil, Malayalam or Kannada, you get these items. So en makanum, makalum, apuram, varuvakkal. So this you will not find in Indo-Aryan languages, Hindi, Gujarati, Marathi. You will not find them. And you will not find them in the Munda languages. You will marginally find them in the Tibeto-Burman languages. Manipuri has this, but it is not it is ga in the case of Manipuri. So this is not widely attested in other South Asian languages. So there are features that are widely shared with other South Asian languages, and there are features that are not widely shared with other South Asian languages. A third feature that we are going to focus is the classifier, use of classifier. And here, now within the Dravidian family, the structure is not uniform. The structure has a lot of variation. So for example, look at these items here at the top. All of them mean person. So we have Mandi, Jana, Al, and Per. All of them mean person, but they are not attested in all the Dravidian languages on your left-hand side. So on your left-hand side, you have Arebase, Byari, Kannada, Koraga, Malayalam, Tamil, Tulu, Telugu. they have different classifiers for they have different classifiers. Now, 10 teachers, if we try to say 10 teachers in Dravidian languages, we get 10, and then an item comes between 10 and teacher. So for example, if we try to say 10 teachers in Kannada, it becomes 10 mandi teachers. So there is a mandi here. Now, as thing is that for example, Koraga, it becomes 10 jana teachers, jana, but not mandi. Or if we take Tamil, we get Pattu pair teachers. So the pair instead of mandi or jana comes here. And there is also another item, all, attested in Bihari and Malayalam. And Malayalam, if you say 10 teachers, most probably there is nothing here. It is only 10 teachers. There is nothing between 10 and teachers. So this shows even within the Dravidian languages, there is a lot of variation. Let us, this is the last feature that we are looking at here. This is again a variation, considerable variation within the family. Now see, Tamil and Malayalam, if we travel back, now see, Tamil and Malayalam, we said that they are very closely related languages. But look at this feature. The sentence is, he came, she came, it came. For he it is avan, and for she it is aval, and for it is ada. So no problem there. Malayalam also has the same pattern, avan, aval, ada. But if you look at the verb, avan vandan. So if it is a male, it is an at the end, avan vandan. But as long as that, if it is a female, it is aval vandal, all. And as long as that, if it is a neuter element like a dog, then it is other vantata. So the verb terminations are different. Now this feature is completely absent in Malayalam. Malayalam, whether it is avan or whether it is aval or whether it's other, it is avanvannu, avalvannu, aduvannu. There is nothing on the verb. And such changes, it takes a lot of years to develop such changes. So I think with this, I think and 6, yeah. I think we can make some concluding remarks. First one is, our Dravidian languages are a part of the Indian grammatical tradition. So it's an integral part of Indian grammatical tradition. So if we say Indian grammatical tradition, not only we have to mention Sanskrit, but we also have to mention Tamil or Telugu or Malayalam or Kannada. So, this is one point here. And the Dravidian literary languages help in understanding the Indian knowledge systems. Now, this, if we look at our these major languages, they not only have grammar works, but they also have other literary works. There are a lot of works on meter, chandas, and other issues. So if we want to know the Indian knowledge system, we need to also study the Dravidian knowledge systems. And then the Dravidian languages, they share some features with other South Asian languages. We saw that, the verb typically comes at the end. But at the same time, the Dravidian languages carry some features which are not shared with other South Asian languages. So now, if we recall the first, second slide, I said we have two interests here. First one, we want to know about linguistics. So here on this slide, we have a very popular textbook, The Study of Language by George Yule, and it is published by Cambridge University Press. It has Indian editions as well. The currency is in Indian rupees. very affordable book and very reader friendly, and a very nice book to get to know more about linguistics. And uh, if we want to know more about the Dravidian languages, definitely these are some of the sources. Now, this is a it has attained the status of classics in Dravidian linguistics by Bhadraju Krishnamurti. And then this is another book that covers the entire South Asian languages, the languages and linguistics of South Asia. And then we have another interesting, very interesting book, Language in South Asia by Baj Kachru, Yamana Kachru, and S.M. Sridhar. And then we have Dravidian languages by, again, Bhadraj Krishnamurti, Encyclopedia Britannica. This is available online for free. Very short, I think some 20 to 25 pages. Very short reading. If you're interested, you may refer to this book.
So we have a first question here. Languages constantly borrow from one another, as you said. So reflecting cultural contact and exchange. Dravidian languages with their rich history have influenced and been influenced by many others. So have words from Dravidian languages entered other languages, and what does this tell us about such exchanges?
Yeah. Thank you very much for the question. Obviously, when we say whenever there is a contact situation between two languages, obviously they borrow from one another. The process of borrowing is not unidirectional but bidirectional. Language A borrows from language B, and language B borrows from language A. Maybe the intensity of borrowing may change depending on the social status of languages. Now, in this question, do we have Dravidian elements in other languages? Yes, there are studies which say that there are Dravidian elements in other South Asian languages. A lot of studies have been conducted on the presence of Dravidian words in Sanskrit, in the Rigvedic language, and some linguists have agreed with them, and some linguists have contested regarding their status. For example, now we have this word kavala. Kavala in Sanskrit, also in Dravidian, it means mouthful, a mouthful. And there is a proposal that it has gone from Dravidian to Sanskrit. Likewise, we have this Sanskrit word khanda. Khanda means piece, which supposedly has gone from the Dravidian languages. In Dravidian languages, we have kandi, and then we have gindi. All these things meaning a whole or piece. So this is one way of borrowing, but languages also undergo structural influence when they come into contact. And many people, many linguists have argued that Dravidian has affected the Sanskrit structure um, uh, in terms of the sound patterns and in terms of the sentence patterns. In sound patterns, for example, in Sanskrit we have the word the word atta, meaning eight in Sanskrit, and subsequently it becomes in Prakrit it becomes atta, and subsequently in modern languages it becomes art. Now, such simplification of forms is attributed to the Dravidian languages. Likewise, in Sanskrit, we have the kartva, having done. Now, this participial form development is attributed to the Dravidian languages. But a word of caution is required. When we started linguistics of South Asia, we started with Indo-Aryan languages and Dravidian languages, and our knowledge of Munda languages was very, very less. So subsequently, we are doing a lot of research on Munda languages, and many people now, they take a view that in many cases, Munda languages also might have influenced the Sanskrit languages. Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, we saw that one in on one of your research papers, it talks about asymptotic coordination words without the use of coordinating conjunctions such as and, but, etc. The research was with reference to Munda language, and Munda language seems to have been influenced by Indo-Aryan and Dravidian languages.
Mm.
So, can you just share what are the interesting insights you have gained from such comparative studies?
Yeah. So when we do comparative studies, we get to know uh, the way languages change, the way languages borrow, and the way languages evolve. It will tell us the direction of a change, and what items are borrowed, what items have undergone structural changes, and so on and so forth. These comparative studies will tell us a lot about language interaction.
Okay, sir. So we have one question in the chat box by
Yeah,
Lakshmi Iyer.
yeah,
What is the role of
Mani-
Manipravalam and the
yeah.
Dravidian linguistic heritage?
Heritage. Yeah, Manipuram. It is in the context of old Malayalam. This form of language was identified, and it is seen as a result of close interaction between Sanskrit and Malayalam. Manipuram definitely tells us a lot about the context situation between Sanskrit and Malayalam.
Sir,
Yeah,
yes, we are, in linguistic research, we often come across highly technical and difficult to understand
yeah,
terms.
yeah,
For example, periphrastic, causative,
yeah, yeah.
and pronominal clitics. So, wouldn't it be helpful if linguists could present their research findings in simpler, more accessible language so that educators who are meant to benefit from these insights can engage with them more effectively?
Very nice question and very reasonable question. Very reasonable demand as well. But see, this terminology, these terms have evolved over centuries. And right away, we cannot replace the terms and simplify them. If we are doing in our field, if we are doing if we are doing research, we will be forced to use these terms. There is no way of shying away from these terms. That is, I understand this question, and one problem here is that linguistics is not a widely taught subject at the undergraduate level. If linguistics becomes part of our undergraduate curriculum system, then we will have greater exposure to we will have a greater exposure to the subject matter itself, linguistics itself, and we will be familiar with the terminology of linguistics. Very nice question. Yeah, I understand. I think let us take this question. Why is Sinhala considered an Indo-Aryan language by linguists? Now, see, this is the same exercise. You may recall, that we saw one slide on genetic grouping of different languages. So when we do that exercise, the Sinhala forms are identical with other Indo-Aryan languages. The sound patterns of Sinhala are identical with other Indo-Aryan languages, and it is possible for us to derive sound correspondences. That is the reason.
So we have another question from Jiva Bharati. May I know which is the first Dravid language appeared and which area makes the first step of spreading Dravidian languages all over South?
Yeah, this is a highly debated issue. Usually, as far as our understanding goes, one of the proposals say that the speakers came from the northwest regions. Okay, the Dravidian speakers came from the northwest regions. That is, one of the proposals, and usually people agree with that proposal. And the attempts have been made to link Dravidian languages with some other languages of that Central Asia and all. But there is no straightforward answer to this question. And first Dravidian language appeared. Now, see, we cannot. This we may recall that exercise that we did with Tamil, Malayalam, Kannada, and then Proto-Dravidian. When we say Proto-Dravidian, that is a very different kind of language. It's a hypothetical language. So we simply cannot equate Proto-Dravidian directly to Tamil or directly to Kannada or directly to Malayalam and say that, okay, it was Tamil or it was Kannada that appeared first. That kind of statements we don't make in linguistics.